So our first one tonight is a very timely and time-sensitive one. So we actually pushed it to the front. Pardon me. Excuse me. We pushed it to the front of the questions because of the timeliness. And we're going to produce this taping and air it right away. So the original airing will be imminent within a few days of this taping. So many people have been writing to me and asking me in person to address what just happened at the Academy Awards the other day in, this would be April 3rd? 2nd? No. No, it did not happen on the 4th. Happened on the...
March 27th.
March 27th? On March 27th, so about a week ago, and 2022. And when very famous singer, movie star Will Smith slapped a very renowned and well-respected comedian and movie star Chris Rock on live global television, something that had virtually never happened in the whole history, 94-year history of the Academy Awards, and something that perhaps rarely has happened on television in general, but certainly never before on that award show. And yes, it was unscripted and surprising and unexpected by all parties concerned. So a lot of people have been asking me to address this because, as again in present time, the media and social media as well are just swamped with it all day, every day. For the first few days, it eclipsed almost all other news worldwide, and so it's quite a hot topic and still has not simmered down yet. Now we're 8 or 9 days later, and it's still in the press all day, every day, and much more will continue to come from this. So people have been asking me, can you please give us a divine overview and some divine insights about this? Some of what I will share has been said, and some of it has not been said, but I will give you a full divine perspective on it. First of all, there's been a lot of misrepresentation about this, not only in the news, but by different people who are speaking about it, whether it's journalists or other celebrities or other comics or pundits, whatever, lawyers. There's been a lot of misrepresentation. So I'd like to just sort the wheat from the chaff and separate fact from fiction first and foremost. So let me address that part first. Let's see where to go with this. One of the things that a lot of people overlooked, and thankfully one very famous journalist and entertainer pointed it out, thank God, that Will did laugh heartily at the joke initially, until he casually turned his head and saw that his wife, again, contrary to what the media said, was not outraged and devastated. She just rolled her eyes like, really? Is that necessary? So so he laughed at the joke. She actually, new footage came out days later, and she actually chuckled at it too, and then rolled her eyes. So it wasn't that big a deal. Contrary to what the media said, Chris Rock was not making fun of her alopecia, her hair loss, immune deficit disorder, and likely did not even know about it. It's really rude and insulting to just assume that Chris knew about it and took a below-the-belt shot at her. Give the guy some credit. He's world famous. He's extremely classy, highly intelligent, well-educated, extremely erudite, and he has wife and kids, and he's got, or he had wife. I don't know if he's married or divorced now, but he's a very classy, well-mannered man. So to just say that he went after her alopecia, he probably didn't even know she had it. So that's an unfair jab to take that's now become like a common, sentiment of people. So that's highly likely inaccurate. And he even said, after he got slapped, he said, it was a G.I. Jane joke. It was a nothing joke. Will's wife, Jada, also had just said an hour prior out on the red carpet, she said, I don't give a rat's behind, or whatever word she used, what anyone thinks about my bald head. So perhaps maybe that's not as true as she'd like to think. But anyway, it really was a nothing joke. It was, obviously there was some charge there, perhaps from the joke Chris said 6 years ago. Maybe that's where the sting was. Who knows? But I'm not going to sit here and presume or or speak off the Akashic record on that one. But it was, by and large, I had a whole career as a comedian, and I've watched the Oscars every year for over 40 years. It was a nothing joke, very innocuous. What made it even more innocuous and harmless was the fact that Jada, number one, looks amazing with a shaved head. A lot of people don't have very nice looking skulls, and she has an almost biologically perfect skull. She looks gorgeous, and she was arguably one of the most stunning women at the event that night. The gown as well as the person, the whole way she was presented, which makes the joke even more harmless. So that needs to be diffused and clarified. Also, it was said that, when Will came up and made his speech, the speech was extremely inauthentic, and it was extremely self-aggrandizing and self-obsessive. He never mentioned Chris's name. You could say, granted, he was in shock and he was this and that, or he was still fuming, but you did commit a criminal offense. You assaulted a man. There were many police and district attorneys who spoke about it, and lawyers, and said, yes, it is a criminal offense. It was a battery, if not assault and battery, but for sure battery. So it's a misdemeanor. So if you committed a crime on stage, it would behoove you to apologize to the person you assaulted. And his first thoughts were to the Academy and his fans, which was an expression of vanity and self-obsession, not of remorse for having struck and hurt another human being, much less in front of the whole planet, or many millions of people worldwide. It's not that 7 billion didn't see it, but it was nations worldwide and millions of people. So the fact that he never mentioned him was very auspicious. And then there were other things that happened that were there was a lot of contradiction in there. He tried to stand behind the character he portrayed and won the Oscar for portraying King Richard, the father of the tennis legends, Venus and Serena. I'm just like him, I'm just like him. And I'm surprised he forgot, since he starred in the film and perhaps even produced it, that the whole thing about King Richard, if you didn't see the movie, is that he was a stanchion of nonviolence, and this man took beatings all his life, and multiple times in front of his children. He would not be violent. So to stand there, with an Oscar in your hand for portraying him and saying, I'm just like him, you're not just like him, you're the opposite of him. You just showed violence. And even the real life man said the next day in an interview, he when he was questioned, he said, well, I didn't see it and I don't want to comment on that. He said, but no, I'm not in support of physical violence. He said, and many people have said the only exception, if someone assaults you and you're trying to defend yourself, that's different. But a harmless word, and comedians and guests and hosts were on the stage for 1 or 2 hours prior to that moment, cracking jokes at everyone, and some that were 100 times more scathing than the Jada joke, which wasn't even scathing, nor an alopecia joke. It was a nothing comment. But the event, there were people on stage jibing and kibitzing and making fun of stuff all night, and that's what they do. And people just learn to roll with it. So no, he was not just like King Richard. He also said in his speech, I'm a vessel of love. Well, vessels of love don't assault people violently and physically. So that was inauthentic and hypocritical. And it just went on and on and on. And then again, no apology to him. Then the following day, he issued an apology on Instagram, which, again, a lot of it, like even in his speech, when he was visibly moved and upset, he was crying in his speech. But the next day when he when he posted, I don't know whether he himself wrote it. Usually, for those who you don't know, when someone's that big of a celebrity, they all have publicists, teams of people, damage control people, agents, managers, all kinds of people guiding your career. There aren't rarely individual decisions, but that was a well-sculpted and well-written letter, except for two very inauthentic things that were in it. The letter was gorgeous, and it really moved me until I got to the very end of it. And when he said, as a celebrity, a public figure, and a movie star, I should be used to getting, jokes made about me, this and that, and I'll raise the bar on that. And I'm paraphrasing and be better at that. However, you make fun of my wife, and that's a different story. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but he justified it again. Now, if you break apart the etymology and the essence of what he's saying, by definition, if Chris said the joke about him, then Will is saying, then my wife should run up and slap you. Because he said, I can take a joke, but you make a joke about my wife, who is a very tough cookie. Jada is a very together woman, outspoken, strong, vivacious, tenacious. She's made a way for herself in the world. She can take care of herself in anyone's courtroom. She's a really together woman. So to say that you make fun of her and then I'm justified, that just erased the whole beautiful apology, which no one seemed to notice or comment on. So there was inauthenticity, but the most inauthentic thing of all, this has all been about vanity and trying to protect and save the career. If you boil it all down, take away the movie star, take away the hundreds of millions of dollars, take away all the deals and movie projects and potentially lost jobs and blah, 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 blah. Let's make it about a human being attacking and assaulting another human being. If that crushed you, that you did that to someone and you had conscience and felt remorse and were devastated, and I can speak for myself. I mean, most people in the course of their lives, if you've been on the planet at least 3 or 4 decades, chances are you've said or done something, if not a physical assault, that really hurt someone. And chances are, if you've done that, there might have been one time, at least once, if not more than once, when the moment it happened, you went, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And you feel horrible. Now, again, speaking in the first person, when something like that, not a physical assault, because I'm not physically violent, but let's say having said something that I know really hurt someone and I didn't mean it to, or maybe I did mean it and I caught myself, whatever, and I'm going back decades now. I'd be beside myself, and anybody would. You wouldn't be able to think about anything else. And how could he not have an apology that night on the commercial break? Later that night, he's out dancing, waving his award around. The next morning, even if at some point during that night, you'd go on the commercial break, you'd go after the show, you'd go whatever, or at the latest, let's say you just wanted to give space to everyone to cool off, the next morning, he'd be knocking on that door. These people, in their careers, they travel all over the world, but they were both at the Oscars. So the next morning, they were both in LA. If that were me, or if that were almost anybody, you'd be at that person's door on your knees, knocking with flowers. I'm really sorry. I'm heartbroken. I don't know what could hold me, blah, 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 whatever the words are. How can I make this right? But, Chris Rock had a show days later, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night. He opened at a theater in Boston. And he said, contrary to what you're all seeing and hearing in the media, he said, nobody has called me. It's now 3 to 4 days later, three days later. So that speaks volumes. That speaks louder than anything else that happened and anything else that anyone said. There's a message there. So, and some of these things, like I said, are not being pointed out, and it's important that they do. Let's take all the limelight and the fanfare off of this and see it for what it is. Again, there's just a lot of focus on the Hollywood of it all and the vanity of it all, and not on a human being assaulting a human being and truly feeling remorse for it. And the fact that the apology to Chris, everyone keeps saying, oh, he did apologize to Chris the next day. It was a post on Instagram, not a phone call, not let's meet for lunch, not I'm sending over a truckload of flowers, please talk to me, pick up the phone. They have each other's number. That's not really an apology. You assaulted him on global television, a post on Instagram. And by the way, Chris, I'm sorry. That doesn't cut it for me. It was well written, and then justified at the end. But you talk about my wife, so then ultimately, yeah, you deserve it. I'll take a joke in the future, but don't make fun of my wife, because then you might still get slapped. He didn't use those words, but the essence is there, and that should not have been in there. Trying to think what else is. I'm trying to think of all the different questions people are asking me. Someone was asking me about the karma of it. Will he incur karma? That's kind of a moot point. Everyone incurs karma. Karma, you reap what you sow, good and bad. You do kind, loving acts, then the universe amplifies and sends back to you whatever you put into the universe. So yes, there's karma for all our choices, loving and non-loving. The thing that really is starting to ripple and kind of blow out of proportion, or into larger proportions, is that there is a rippling effect here. A lot of comedians have been speaking out this week saying that now they're wondering how this might affect the comedy industry, that have you just given carte blanche to anyone who feels offended by anything to go clock and deck a comedian, or any figure who says anything about someone doesn't particularly like, with all the justifying that Will did about it and the righteousness, is sending out this endorsement. I mean, prior to that moment, and I'm sure it's changed, but prior to that moment, he was one of the most loved, beloved, and well-respected people on the whole planet. So that carries a tremendous power of endorsement on whatever he says and does. So the fact that there's been almost a constant barrage of justifying the act sends a message out to all those people about, do this. We've seen in history when someone who has tremendous influence says something, you see the impact it has, good or bad. Oprah Winfrey, when she had her show, she says, I just got this book. I like this book. Within a few days, 100,000 copies are sold. She's not a literary agent. She's not a book reviewer. She's a person who happened to be the most famous woman in the world, with cajillions of followers. And she just says, I like this book, and bestseller. I like that person. They're sold out. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, 7-time Mr. Olympia, he gets on the cover of Cigar Magazine with a cigar. Cigar sales nationwide go up 30%, or some ridiculous figure. So people in that limelight have tremendous influence. So to sit there and justify sends out an endorsement. If you don't like what someone says, deck them. And a lot of comics now are speaking up, and they're saying, we're not worried about the Oscars. It's never going to happen at the Oscars again, or at the Grammys, or anywhere public where there's security and money and this and that. The comics are saying, what about when I'm at Joe's Grill Shack outside of Des Moines, Iowa, and some person's going to run up on stage and deck me, where there is no security and there is no this and that and limelight and notoriety. Or when I'm walking to my car, maybe someone won't come up on stage at the risk of getting caught. Maybe someone will stop and wait for me to go to my car because one of the most famous people on earth says this is what you're supposed to do. So there needs to be a lot of cleanup and damage control in these arenas which have not been addressed yet. There are people postulating about it, but the official cleanup hasn't happened on this, and it really needs to happen. And it needs to originate from him, from the perpetrator. There needs to be a statement, Even his own son, an hour later, posted on his Twitter, I think it was, he said, this is how we do it, and this is how we roll, or something like that. It's like, is that the message you want to teach your son? So these type things need to be undone, because the seeds have been sown and planted, and they need to be undone, and the proper message needs to go out there. And yes, it has started, but it's been pretty inauthentic and pretty lame. And the Academy has been just as bad. That night they said their excuse was, we couldn't get everyone together, to all the powers and movers and shakers and decision makers in time to make a decision on what to do, which is a complete and total lie. I was in show business for years. You have someone who has instant and immediate overruling called a director, and an exec producer who happen to be shoulder to shoulder in the control room. So a director can just make any call he wants. That's what the job entails. So we couldn't get all the board people together. That doesn't happen anyway, and never was going to. That was a blatant lie. The fact that a crime was committed, he should have been escorted out of the building immediately. I get that we could let the dust settle and sort out the legalities, lawsuit, police, whatever. That could have been done later. But a crime was committed, and it was a very awkward moment for everybody. And at the very least, he should have been escorted out of the room. And that didn't happen. So the Academy is it's got a lot of egg on its face too, and really is in a there were crimes committed in that regard that were almost as bad, and then an hour later everyone's standing up and applauding, but he just attacked someone, and it was a shock and an embarrassment across the board. And then the next day the Academy lied again and said we actually asked him to leave and he refused. And then the following day in the press, 3 days out, one of the producers was interviewed and said, not only did we not ask him to leave, retracted the lie from the former day after the lie on the first night, but on the third day, one of the head producers said, not only did we not ask him to leave, but I myself implored him not to leave. Because even though no one can look in the envelope, everyone pretty much knew that he was going to take the Oscar that night. It was kind of a done deal. And he said, I know I actually asked him not to leave. Not that he would have anyway, but he said, I actually asked him not to. So this saga has just gone on, and it really needs to be cleaned up. Does he feel bad? Of course he does. I'm sure he's embarrassed and feels all kinds of stuff. And for the record, so no one thinks I'm sitting here bashing Will, he was one of my top 5 favorite people on the whole planet in the entertainment world. I've just adored that man all my life. So I'm not sitting here, counting, taking cheap shots at anyone or picking on anyone, giving you an objective overview of divine truth on a situation that has been twisted and misspoken and misinterpreted 7 ways to Sunday. So anyway, we'll see what comes of it. We're still in the throes of it now. It's only just after a week later. And hopefully this will get cleaned up properly. And I'm sure, bit by bit, players will come into the fold here. We'll keep ushering this along because the divine is overseeing it. One of the things that I point out, and the most important thing, again, not so much on the global stage because I don't have that kind of visibility. I wish I did. But to the people who train with me and work with me and talk to me, I always, not just with this scenario, but with anything, I always say to them, anything that happens in this world is happening under God's auspices. So, while God may not have created it, God certainly allowed it, or it couldn't be happening. So why did this end up happening on a global stage, on live television, in front of tens of millions of people, rather than at a restaurant where only maybe 10 or 20 people would have witnessed it? There was a reason it was there. Strong messages. Hopefully, I'm expanding now into the larger implication of this from the divine perspective, that maybe now a lot of people who were physically abusive and violent can now see, because it's now outside of them. It was so egregious and so flagrant and so way outside the box, the 9-dot matrix. It was so way outside the box. Over dramatic and overstated in every conceivable way, that it shines a glaring spotlight on how inappropriate and wrong physical violence is. And let's hope and pray, and I'm sure it has happened, that some people who have been physically abusive to others, whether it's friends, spouses, children, whatever, people in public, on the street, that they have a major wake-up call, bucket of water over their head, and have this huge self-reflection of, oh my God, that's me. I've hit people. I've hit my children. Look at that. That's like, nobody deserves that ever. Granted, people do make exceptions for self-defense, and I know that could be argued too, but most people will make an exception for that. But that's not what I'm talking about here. There was no self-defense here. So that is one of the implications of it being on a global stage. And one of the really important things, most important things I say to people always is, put yourself there. Like, if you saw that, and everyone did, put yourself there. What is there anything in me that this is speaking to? Where do I hold violence, verbally or physically? because you don't need to limit it to physical. And one of my students said the other day, I put myself in both people. Where how am I like Chris, and and what did that show me about me or teach me about me? So it's really important. This whole art of introspection, of self-reflection, is so important. What is it teaching me? And it may not be in kind that he was physically violent. That means you're physically violent. But if anything happens to you or in your biosphere, that it somehow enters your consciousness directly or indirectly, then it's there for a reason. Your soul magnetized to tell you something, to teach you something, to show you something, to help you improve, expand, and become a greater, larger, more loving version of yourself. So be the bloodhound who's looking and hunting, or the person seeking for the buried treasure. Find the hidden treasure in here for what it has to offer you to grow and expand and become a better person. Now, since I've spoken from one side, I want to speak from the other side too. What I witnessed in Chris after having been assaulted on live global television, I can honestly say I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that in my entire life, in 6 decades on this planet. I'm hard-pressed to think of a moment. The dignity, the aplomb, the class, the manners, the maturity, the groundedness, the stepping aside, putting yourself aside to serve the greater good, that he not only did not react and did not retaliate, which most people would have, or withdraw, run off the stage. He stood there composed, dignified, and then went on to present an Oscar without missing a beat. He didn't even stutter. He just, maybe part of it was shock, but that's irrelevant. What I witnessed him, I was saying to friends ever since it happened, I said, they should hand him an Emmy just for how he handled that. Because people on the Oscars, presenters, have been given Emmys for their performance. Like if someone hosts the show and it's really good, they can win an Emmy for hosting the Oscars, since it's a television show. I think they should hand him an Emmy for what he did. It was the message that sent out, and it shocks me that some people are calling him weak. Weak is the antithesis of what he demonstrated. He demonstrated class, maturity, just compassion, empathy. Every dignified, divine character trait you could think of was wrapped up in that man. And I already adored him too, like I did Will, but now, what I think of him is just in the stratosphere. If I was in front of him, I would kiss his feet. I swear to God, for what I witnessed him do, how he handled that. And the fact that he has, stayed silent and not retaliated in the press, class act all the way. It's just astounding, and not in the slightest a sign of weakness. Now, there are a lot of people ballyhooing around there saying, well, Witt's defending his wife. Let's sort the wheat from the chaff here. I understand the principle of defending your wife. A, she needed no defense. B, it was a innocuous, nothing joke. But let's just suppose it was a really horrific joke, which it wasn't. And let's suppose she was devastated and felt deeply insulted, which she didn't and wasn't, just by her expression. She was just like, well, seriously. She didn't appreciate it, but it was not a big deal to her either, at least by her reaction. How she feels privately, she has not expressed yet. But let's suppose it was, just benefit of the doubt. There are many dignified ways to defend your wife, your honor, your family. He could have just said from the stage, hey, he could have walked up on stage and said, what are you doing, man? She's hurt. That still wouldn't have been the high road, but at least it's not an assault. But he could have said, stop. Or he could have waited till a commercial break, pulled him aside. Could you step over here for a moment and say, hey, buddy, you took a shot at her and me a couple years ago, and now you did it again. He said, can you please, since you just did it on live global television, could you walk up? We'll talk to the producers. Can you go up and just take 10 seconds to apologize on stage? A jillion things could have happened, but didn't. So it's really pathetic when people are speaking out saying he's defending his wife. There are many ways to defend. Where do you draw the line? Does that mean, what's the next thing? You just shoot someone? Is that defending your wife? Words do not equate to physical violence. They're still words. And yes, they do hurt. I've been insulted plenty in my life, and still get insulted. It doesn't mean they don't hurt. but you can't justify words with physical violence, especially when you are not physically threatened or assaulted yourself, especially then. So we need to spray, a big fire hose on all that people speaking up saying he's defending her, and that's honorable. Defending someone is honorable. Assaulting someone is not. Long and short of it. Okay, I think I've covered enough on it from now. Obviously, since this is fresh and new, there are all kinds of things that will still come of this, and more discussion, resolutions, ramifications, karmic, playbacks, and retribution. So, life will demonstrate those as they happen. But I wanted to clarify a lot of the confusion, misinterpretation, and misconception and misperceptions thus far in the 9 days since it's happened, or 8 days or whatever. All righty? So let's say a prayer for all the parties involved, and more than anything, let's all glean from this what we can to change behaviors in ourselves that might not be the most kind and loving. Let's, find ways to strengthen our own character and become kinder, more compassionate, more merciful, more loving, and giving and caring people and versions of ourselves. That's how we can really make the most of this. And also, be a stand for forgiveness and understanding. All righty? Thank you. And thanks for the question.